Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our event tonight. I'll be moderating a little bit and helping along with the Q&A and the chat section. So a little bit of housekeeping for FEI Chicago. Attendees can be on video during the presentation, but we do ask you stay muted. I do hear somebody now. I do ask you stay muted during the presentation, at least until the Q&A session. You can ask questions through the chat, or you can have conversations through the chat. So I will be monitoring that for the questions and facilitating a Q&A at the end of Nick's presentation, where we will address your questions and you can ask them then. FEI Chicago chapter, we will be giving a 1 hour CPE credit for this event, this meeting. You must attend the full meeting, and then you can request your CPE credit from Susan at the FEI Chicago office at info@feichicago.org. That's info@feichicago.org to get your CPE credit. All right, the next thing I do want to bring up our free trial membership. I want to remind everybody, if you have colleagues, I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, if you have colleagues or friends that want to test out FEI, we are giving 6-month free memberships at the moment. I'm not sure when that will expire. We've had it going for a little bit now. You can see on your screen the information of where to get that membership. Feel free to reach out to anybody you think can qualify for FEI. We would love to have them. We're always looking for new members, and they can try us out for 6 months for free. Other than that, I will jump in and introduce Nick and let him take it from here. So Nick Espinosa, for over 25 years, Nick has been on a first name basis with computers. Landing his first IT job at age 15. I don't know about that, Nick. What's the labor laws there? But 15, he had his first IT job. Probably where he got all those DVDs. I mean, Blu-rays behind him. But Nick founded Windy City Networks at 19, which was acquired in 2013 by BSSI2. Nick created security in 2015. Nick created Security Fanatics, a cybersecurity and cyber warfare outfit dedicated to designing custom cyber defense strategies for medium to enterprise corporations. An expert in cybersecurity and network infrastructure, Nick has consulted with clients ranging from the small business owners to the Fortune 100 levels. And with that, I hand it over to Nick. Nick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction. And it is actually nice to see some familiar faces here from FEI past and followers and whatnot. So I really appreciate the opportunity here. And I actually just found out that I should be speaking at the FEI National Conference as well, which I think is in May, on cybersecurity as well, but I believe a different presentation than what I'm doing for you guys here. And so with that, let me share my screen, and you guys should be everybody should be able to see my screen now. All right, very good. I'm seeing some nods. So yes, today we're going to be talking about the 5 laws of cybersecurity. Now, this is actually something that I wrote in 2018 for Forbes. I actually regularly write for Forbes, and let me pull up my quick bio here. I am not going to go through it. But I actually write for Forbes. I'm on their technology council. I also write for Michael Smerconish of CNN and SiriusXM. I have a nationally syndicated radio show on NPR affiliates around the nation called The Deep Dive with Nick Espinosa, where we talk about all things cybersecurity, cyber warfare, technology, and all of that. And one of my latest endeavors, which I'm really excited about, is I'm actually working with the United Nations as part of a team to help build cyber defense strategies for developing nations, those countries, unlike the United States, that just simply don't have a lot of infrastructure and therefore defense. And so with that, as I mentioned, I'm going to stick around and answer pretty much any questions that you guys have. It was decided I'm going to go through my presentation, and then you guys can be as verbose as you want with me, and feel free to ask me anything. And with that, let's get going. But before we dive in to the actual 5 laws of cybersecurity, we in society have a very serious problem on our hands. And that's basically that the general population, most of us, really are ignorant of how unsafe we can be with the infrastructure around us. So consider these numbers from Pew and other top leading research outfits. 27%, almost 1/3 of us, don't know that public Wi-Fi can be unsafe. I literally do live hacking demonstrations when I'm on stage about how I can spoof and hijack wireless very easily, inserting infections into devices, capturing information, simply because we all sat down at our local coffee shop and decided to share wireless together. These are things that we really don't understand as a society. Over half of us really don't understand what ransomware is, that it's an infection that goes into your computer, encrypts all of your data, your documents, your pictures, your videos, and all of this. And basically, you then have to pay some jerk money to get it back. On the corporate side, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. On the residential side, on the private side, it's usually anywhere from $300 to $700 that we see ransomware hit. But most of us just don't know what it is, more than half of us. 61% of us don't understand that private browsing doesn't actually shield them from their internet service provider. So when you open up Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or whatever browser and you go to that private tab, well, it doesn't necessarily leave a record of your search history or what you're doing. Your internet service provider completely knows where you're going at all times, unless you have something like a VPN. But the problem that we have is that 86% of us don't really understand that we need a VPN or what a VPN does or how it helps to minimize risk of insecure connections by actually wrapping your internet connection in an extra layer of security. Think about that. Almost 9 in 10 people really don't understand these, what are now considered very basic concepts for security and privacy in our lives. And think about this, almost 9 in 10, 89%, when given by Pew a panel of 4 different pictures, could not properly identify what multi-factor authentication is. And that is one of the most important things that we have for logins. I don't care if you're going to your bank or you're going to Facebook, wherever you're going online, Google, Amazon, take your pick. When you log in, having that second factor for authentication, whether it's an Authenticator app on your iPhone or your Android, or a text message, or even an email, is significantly more secure than simply having a username and password. Because if I'm able to steal it or just simply get it from the dark web, which is a very serious problem, I can log right in. But with multi-factor authentication, I don't have that extra step. But most of us, only 11% of us know that. That's a huge problem. And this is the society, this is the world that we live in today. And it's not just the general public. The nerds in our lives are not off the hook here either, because we're the ones that are supposed to be conveying all of this information. And when 89% of you don't know what multi-factor authentication is or how to identify it, that falls onto the IT and the cybersecurity staff in your life. Basically, we have a serious problem with the interactions of IT and cybersecurity personnel with the general public. So surveys show that 37% of people basically don't really trust, only 1 in 3 basically trust the major corporations with their data. We live in the era of data breach. Whether it's Facebook data mining you, whether it's Google data mining you, whether it's Marriott getting you breached, whether it's SolarWinds that breached the entire federal government and massive Fortune 100 corporations, or it's Microsoft breaching the email servers, that are sitting in your offices, we simply have a population that doesn't trust, because we, on the IT and cybersecurity side of things, are failing to really live up to good data security standards that are keeping everybody safe. And studies show that while people basically love tech, they love the technology, they dread calling for technical support, even if they know their tech support person. I'm going to call Nick the computer guy. I don't want to call him because it's going to be problematic. Or one of the biggest problems that we have is jargon, and I'll get to that right now. But think about this stat real quick. Only 38% of us think that technology has benefited them personally. Now, what does that tell us about society when just a little more than 1 in 3 think that technology has benefited them? It shows us that the general population has a really myopic view of what they consider technology. That's the phone in front of them. That's the laptop or desktop computer in front of them. But what they're not thinking about are the other improvements in technology that we have in the world, because we're not telling them. What about car safety? Cars today are vastly more safe and secure thanks to technology with driver drowsiness awareness, making sure you don't improperly change lanes. Sorry, BMW drivers. I mean, we have technology that is improving our lives. Health technology that improves our lives, makes us last longer, live longer. We have technology all around us that improves us, but we can only see the problems we have with our iPhone or our Android or our Windows or our MacBook. And that is a very serious issue that we have as well. The number one problem cited, basically why you don't want to call your technology person, is jargon. And when I'm on stage and I am talking to my fellow nerds, my IT directors, my CIOs, even the tech support staff, it's one of the things I tell them is that we all have to be good at nerd to English translation. It's like me, and no offense, FEI, but when I'm talking to my accountant, my eyes gloss over, and the only thing I want to know is how much do I owe the damn IRS? Just tell me that. Where do I sign the check? I don't want to know about pivot tables and anything else. That's not what I do. In the same way, when I go to my mechanic, I don't care what the mechanic is doing to my car. I just don't want it to blow up. And so I take it to a mechanic. We have a problem with jargon in every field, but in technology, because it's so around us, we use it every single day. We wake up to an alarm clock. We go to bed with our phones. This is a huge, huge problem. And if our nerds really can't talk to us about this, how can we fully understand and defend ourselves? That's a problem. If we can't convey proper defensive technologies and what you should be doing or should not be doing, we have a very serious problem, which is why we need a common language. And that's why I built the 5 Laws of Cybersecurity. I had my elderly mother, and she would kill me if I told you her age, in mind when I wrote these, because if she can understand and grasp these concepts, I know the world can. She's very technologically illiterate, and so she gets this and she applies this into her life. And with that, let's start with law number 1. If there's a vulnerability, it will be exploited. It's really that simple. Think about this. If there is a vulnerability, it will be exploited. No exceptions. There are no exceptions to this rule, because human history is full of examples of this. Think about the very first time a human in society, when society had just formed and they had just created money, somebody thought, you know what? We should build a place where we can store the money, secure the money, guarantee the money. We're going to build a bank. And I guarantee you, as soon as that bank was built, there was somebody out there that said, oh, that's where the money is. I'm going to rob that. And they're going to figure it out. This is human nature. This is who we are. And a hacker's mentality is key to understanding the motivations against this law. There is basically everything out there in society to be hacked. This is what we do. I mean, think about non-technical hacking as well. The automatic toll booth. Most of us are probably in Chicago or Illinois. We have iPass, so we can blow through the tolls on I-90 or 94 and not even think about it. But when this first came out, somebody realized, if I just cover my license plate, they can't take a picture of my license plate, and therefore, I don't have to pay tolls. And so then what happens? Illinois has to come out and say, okay, it's illegal to cover your license plate because we need our revenue, and on and on. This is what we do. There are websites that are set up to basically hack everything in your life. Lifehacker.com is one of those websites. Life hacking is everywhere. You want to organize your closet better using this simple technique or this simple hack? There you go. You want to figure out how to go through that toll booth? You want to break into a massive computer system? This is what we're talking about. This is pervasive in society. Our desire to explore and to hack everything is there. And I love technology. I have every stupid gadget you can possibly think of. This ring right here on my finger is actually a smart band that is taking my heartbeat and my whatever telemetry I have. I have all of these gadgets, and I have broken into every single one of them, including every phone I've ever bought, because this is what we do. And I am legion out there. I really am. Which brings us to law number 2. Everything is vulnerable in some way. So if there's a vulnerability, it will be exploited, and everything is vulnerable in some way. Now, think about this. People generally can't trust in data and technology because we keep getting breached. That is basically a fact. Look at the massive corporations in our life, whether they're insurance companies that have gotten hit, Equifax that has gotten hit, Marriott, Microsoft that has gotten hit, which is literally considered a leader in cybersecurity. They are spending millions, if not billions, annually on cyber defense strategies, and basically hackers are innovating around them. That basically creates a low trust society when it comes to data, and we need that. And we'll be talking about that in a bit. But hardware development is constantly being hit. So for years, Intel processors that are running the computer that I've got here, running the computer that I've got there, and probably running most of the computers and laptops that you have in your life, were carrying a major vulnerability that went undiscovered for decades as they developed the next generation of processor and the next generation of processor. And it eventually came to light that attackers could simply walk right into your computer because of a vulnerability they had to fix. That was called Spectre. VPN filter hit a whole bunch of routers that you could get at Best Buy or another retail store, like the Linksys and the Netgears of the world, and essentially turn those into command and control, where they could steal your information, download infections into your network. We have huge problems in hardware development, and software development is no different. Some of the biggest breaches of all time have been basically because of software or lack of updating software when we find a vulnerability. Everything is vulnerable. Equifax basically blamed their entire breach, which was later attributed to Chinese state-sponsored hackers, for the record. So they've got all of our data. This was basically attributed to like one guy in the IT department not updating the hosted web infrastructure that was public. And because that person was one patch back, damn it, Bob, why didn't you do it? They were able to walk right in and steal all of our data, right down to our social security numbers, our credit histories, everything. This is what we are talking about here. Software development is a serious issue as well. IoT development has had some of the worst disasters in terms of data breaches and weaponization, and I'll be getting to that in a future law, but that is a huge, huge problem as well. And so think about this. Our homes, our offices, airports, hotels, everybody can basically get compromised if we don't run proper security. We love our free Wi-Fi. We basically will connect to absolutely everything, which brings us to law number 3. Now, if you watch the actual TED Talk that I did on this was actually my second of 3 TED Talks that I did. At the end of this law number 2, I told the entire audience to basically look under their chairs for something that my team put there. And I got 1,000 people in that audience to basically stand up and look under their chairs for absolutely nothing that was there, because I didn't have a team with me. I simply went to the event to speak. And I went to law number 3, which is humans trust even when they shouldn't. And that got a laugh. And that audience really underscored my point here, is that when we are looking at things like authority, we tend to believe, or we tend to execute on what we have. If you're a boss, if you're a manager, you know that you've got employees that will say how high when you say jump. This is what we're talking about. And so by virtue of that, we have to understand why humans trust before we can really examine it in depth, before we can actually make a defense for this. Law number 3 is our most important law. Overwhelmingly, most breaches are due to human error, human mistake, humans trusting that email when they shouldn't, trusting that link when they shouldn't. This is our biggest problem, and it stems from trust. Now, the first aspect of trust, if you didn't know, is known as cognitive trust. This is based on our knowledge and evidence about basically who or what we choose to trust. And the example that I typically use, and my very first TED Talk was called Trust Sucks, where I examine this in depth. Think about that local coffee shop that we all have in our lives. We walk in 99 times, and our logic, our cognitive trust tells us the wireless has worked fine for 99 times. It's going to work fine for 100. I have not had a problem 99 times. So my 100th time, logically, it should be there and it should work fine. That is what we do every time we walk in and do something over and over and over again that we consider safe and secure. Now, the flip side of that coin is known as effective trust. That is based on our emotional ties with others and the confidence we place in our interactions. So when I walk into that coffee shop for the 99th time, I know that it's going to be logically safe and secure because I've used it 99 times, therefore 100 is fine. But when I walk in, everybody's like, Norm, and there's my favorite barista, that makes the drink exactly how I like it. And there's my favorite chair, in the corner where I'm going to sit down and have that cup of coffee and, do what I want to do and connect to that wireless. This is safe because it's familiar. And both of these things are tied with object permanence. Now, if you're not familiar with this, we actually developed this in our infancy. We're not born with this. So when you are a very small infant and you see, let's say, a ball in front of your face, the ball is in your ecosystem. You know it's there. But as soon as I take that ball away from that infant and move it behind them, the ball is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. It's in the ether. As we grow, as we develop, I know that when I walk out this door, my kitchen in my house, for example, is still going to be there. I know that my front yard is my front yard. I know this because we have object permanence. And that reinforces that 100th time you walk into the coffee shop and say, yes, my object permanence tells me 100 on time 100, that Wi-Fi is going to be there. All of these things work together to basically allow an attacker to exploit you. Because if we break down what a hacker does into a single simple concept, it's this. We exploit trust. We lie to you. Whether we're lying about that email because Prince Ubuntu from Nigeria needs help with his revolution, whether we lie to you through a website that looks like google.com but is actually malicious, or a business email compromise scam when we've basically stolen credentials from a financial advisor and then emailed the corporation to move money, making them think or trust that it's legitimate, all we do is exploit trust. That's it. Trust and faith in systems, trust in the human's ability to discern right from wrong or foul from right. This is what we do. This is a huge, huge problem that we have in our lives. We exploit trust, which means we need to create a new standard and a new filter for trust when it comes to our technological environment. And we fail to do that quite a bit. And by virtue of that, we get in quite a bit. And a lot of people are amazed to know how long it takes on average per FBI statistic to break into a single company and steal a single file that's moderately defended. And I go up on stage and I say, how long does it take me to do this? And I get everywhere from 60 seconds to 10 minutes to a week to whatever. The answer is 224 days. On average, if I'm breaking into an organization, it is going to take me 224 days to do it, and 192 days, conversely, for that organization to realize I've actually been in there, and what is the damage that I can do in that time. Now, if we want to cut that time down, because I don't want to spend 224 days breaking into you, what am I going to do? I'm going to go after the humans. And I'm going to go after the humans through phishing, through social engineering, through all of these things, and get somebody to trust me. 7% of all data breaches are successful in under 60 seconds, and that's when you've trusted that your password will actually protect you. These are the problems that we have right now. This is why we need a new filter of trust. And with that, we can go to law number 4. With innovation comes opportunity for exploitation. And this basically speaks to our human nature to want to develop new and amazing products because we have new and amazing products out there. And with the evolution of products that make our cars better, safer, faster, with health tech that makes us more secure in some way, shape, or form to live longer, we basically have an innovation of hacking, and that is a very serious problem. And one of those innovative products that we've seen explode in the last 5 years is IoT, or Internet of Things. These are basically the gadgets in your life that are not a full-blown computer but still plugged in. This could be your DVR. This could be your refrigerator that connects to wireless. This could be the toaster that connects to Wi-Fi so you can print funny things on bread. These are the objects that we have in our life, and oftentimes they are one of the biggest problems we have in cybersecurity because they basically have not been developed that well. They really haven't. And we have this huge problem with this because we have 34 billion IoT devices on the planet live right now. Those are your DVRs. Those are your cameras. Those are those gadgets there. But the problem that we have with this is at any given time, per statistic, 10% of these items, 10% of these IoT devices have been hijacked and essentially infected or weaponized by malicious hackers, which means we have anywhere from 2.4 to 3.4 billion devices that have been hacked and weaponized on the planet, all of which are IoT. This is a very serious problem. And one of the core reasons why this is a problem is that we have increased competition to be the next game changer out there. So when Amazon, for example, developed its IoT device, the Echo, there were a slew of competing products. Apple had their own, Google had their own, even Facebook had the Facebook portal, which I think 6 people bought. So what happens here in this situation is that you have 2 different competing products, and product A knows about product B, and product B knows about product A. And what ends up happening is they both want to get to market first, and one of them will eventually or inevitably cut corners. And usually where they cut corners is in the programming for security. They either don't have good software lifecycle development, which means you can't update it as frequently as you need to defend against security vulnerabilities, or they hard code passwords into this. If you've ever plugged in an IoT device and it simply works and you don't really have to log into it, it connects and you're connecting in a very basic way, odds are it might actually have a hard coded password into it because the developers got lazy and said, if we just hard code it, we don't have to type in a password every time we're accessing this device and testing. And now we have millions, if not billions, of these devices out there. This is a huge problem. And one of the biggest issues that we've seen in the world in terms of basically the most devastating and most lethal is the pacemaker. About, I want to say 5 years ago or so, it was discovered that pacemakers that had integrated Bluetooth technology, this is the same technology you connect to in your car to sync your phone and make calls and all of that, essentially, it had a massive vulnerability in it that would allow somebody like me to essentially break into your pacemaker, change this thing, and kill you. I could literally just make your heart explode by accessing maliciously your pacemaker and changing what it does, changing its behavior. It was to the point where Vice President Dick Cheney, who has had multiple pacemakers, is the only person on the planet I know that doesn't have an actual pacemaker with a Bluetooth connection. He has a wired port, and the doctor actually has to physically connect the computer to him to actually read and manipulate his pacemaker because he was so afraid of somebody breaking into his pacemaker and making his heart blow up like the Russians or the Chinese or somebody, that he actually had it removed and custom made. This is a huge, huge problem. And this IoT is all around us. I mean, we had a huge problem with routers, like the Linksys routers, the DVRs of the world, a couple of years ago with a virus called Mirai that infected millions of devices worldwide and essentially started weaponizing them against targets, launching some of the largest bandwidth attacks the internet has ever seen. So we are talking about knocking out basically half the eastern seaboard in the United States for infrastructure. They took down Netflix and Starbucks, Home Depot, a whole bunch of massive corporations with these kinds of attacks, not to mention attacks in Europe, because people's passwords were password. All these attackers did was try the 50 top passwords for the 50 top devices, and they got into millions of devices. This is a huge, huge problem. And it's not when the next Mirai hits. It's when the next Mirai hits, not if. We already know that Russian state-sponsored hackers were developing a variant of Mirai to basically spread this around in the last year or so. This is a very serious problem that we have. And so this is going to continue to move on. Think to yourself, if you have a car outside of, let's say, a Tesla, which is actually pretty good about this, and they're changing that game. But I've driven some very nice cars over the years, and I would go to the dealership and say, do you have an update for my Bluetooth, for my radio? And the answer was always no. We don't have any kind of update from that. In the 5 years that I had that car, how many vulnerabilities have cropped up in Bluetooth? In the case of my car, it was 112 known security vulnerabilities from the day I bought that car to the day I got rid of it. And we're not updating these things. This is a huge, huge, huge problem because the next generation of cars with that next generation of technology has to make sure that it's defending itself. This is a huge, huge problem. And with that, we go to the last law. And this is actually one of my quicker presentations. I wanted intentionally to do this to leave time for all of your questions. So please get these questions primed. I will answer absolutely everything. But law number 5 is, when in doubt, see law number 1. If there is a vulnerability, it will be exploited. No exceptions. Now, this isn't a cop-out. Honestly, this isn't a cop-out. Because when we are looking at this, no matter what the concern or problem with cybersecurity, they all stem from a vulnerability of some kind. Whether it's a vulnerability in the software that it was developed, and I can exploit that, whether it's a development issue in the hardware that we can exploit or work around, whether it's an issue with the human that didn't decide to update it, or answered that email, or clicked on that link. This is what we have. If there is a vulnerability, it will be exploited. Now, this is human nature. It really is. It is human nature not just to want to hack into absolutely everything. And think about a lot of the attackers out there. They are coming from places in the world where they can't even get jobs. They're coming from economically depressed areas, and groups or outfits like the Russian mob or sometimes state-sponsored cutouts will see or find kids with acumen, give them laptop and promise them more money than they will have ever made in their entire lives living in the region that they live. And so basically breaking into and ripping off fat Americans is perfectly fine with them. This is a payday for them. And if you look at the guy that actually broke into Yahoo almost a decade ago at this point, he was basically tasked as a cutout for the Russian government to break into 70, 80 mailboxes, personal mailboxes of top US government officials. And how do you basically hide the fact you're targeting 70, 80 officials? You break into all 3 billion mailboxes, which is exactly what he did. And he scraped and turned over all of that information to the Russian government. He was caught in Canada. And basically, when you saw pictures of him, you saw pictures of him next to his Aston Martin and his Bentley and all of this. This is somebody that would not have made this kind of money without, let's say, state sponsorship. And oftentimes these people are sitting in Eastern Europe or in Nigeria or other places where it's economically not viable for them other than attacks like this. So basically morality and ethics go right out the window. And we need to start thinking like hackers if we're actually going to stop them. We need to start adopting that mentality when we're walking into our local coffee shop, when we're walking into these places. Think to yourself, hey, we are sitting in the Chicagoland area. We are blanketed with 4G and 5G connections. Do I really need to spend 5-10 minutes on the wireless at my local coffee shop or, out to dinner when basically we have data plans that are perfectly fine? Why do we go for this? Why do we let our kids do this when we live in a society that has these kinds of connections? And it's infinitely more safe to stay on your wireless provider, your Verizon, your AT&T, whoever it is, than connect and share infrastructure with somebody you don't know. These are things that we have to think about. I'm waiting for somebody to share. And when we're breaking into corporations, I will set up at the local coffee shop or wherever the employees go, and I will set up what's called an evil twin attack, spoofing the wireless. And when basically their employees walk in and they're sitting there for their 3 minutes, and per a major chain of coffee, it's usually 3 minutes logistically. You walk in, you order, you wait, you get your coffee, you leave. I know that I have to probe your phone, hack your phone, insert something into your phone, and capture whatever I can in those 3 minutes. And when your phone is completely undefended, or your laptop is, and if you sit down for a long time, I will be more than happy to sit there and try to get around those defenses. This is what we're talking about. But if you're sitting on your Verizon connection or whatever your cellular carrier is, you're excluded because you're not part of the infrastructure that I have created or the infrastructure that I've hijacked. It's much more safe. So we have to think like a hacker when we're walking into these situations to make sure that we are not doing what the hacker wants us to do. And we need to reinforce this common language into basically non-technical people. And that actually dovetails with one of my very last points here, which is we need to build a global herd immunity for cybersecurity. And I have been talking about herd immunity for cybersecurity for years, and it's only in the last year do I not have to explain what herd immunity is. That was the one highlight that I had in COVID beyond everything else. But think about this. Just like a vaccine, if I am completely ignorant about cyber hygiene, if I don't know better and I click on everything that Prince Ubuntu from Nigeria sends me, everybody around me helps protect me. Because if the 99 people in my life are all very cyber aware and don't click links, that means they are much less susceptible to getting hit, to getting hacked, to getting hijacked, which means their address books aren't going to be scraped, and then I'm going to be sent much less possible threat. We are all in this together. So if you have employees or bosses or husbands or wives or siblings or children or parents or aunts and uncles or that second crazy cousin that listens to nobody, everybody needs to listen to this. Everybody needs to know about this because we're all in this together. We are intrinsically more safe. We are intrinsically more secure when we are all aware of these threats. And the more people in our lives that have good cyber hygiene, the less chance we have of being hit. And with that, let me give you, once again, in an easy screenshot, and please feel free to rip this off. I have been ripped off so many times. People have written articles basically claiming this. I actually had a woman at a tech conference in South Africa stand up and do this entire presentation as her own, basically saying that she created this. And I didn't mind. They have an entirely different culture for sharing. I made this for the world. And so if there is a vulnerability, it will be exploited. No exceptions. Everything is vulnerable in some way. Humans trust even when they shouldn't. With innovation comes opportunity for exploitation. And when in doubt, see law number 1. And if you are able to just internalize this, the next time you walk into that potential situation, whether it's that hotel when we finally all get to travel, or that airport lounge, or that coffee shop, and if you've got this in your mind, you're basically going to understand a little bit better why you're more secure. This is beyond important. And so please feel free to take this, rip this off, share this, whatever you want. And with that, I'd like to thank you. As I said, this is my shorter presentation. I can see already 22 comments in chat. So I'm hoping there's a whole bunch of questions there. I do daily video and audio and podcasts and all of that. I just posted one earlier today, on this. And I also, like I said, write for Smerconish CNN. Feel free to follow me on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter or any one of these. And I really always appreciate the time. And I've had a good time hanging out with FEI in the past. And with that, I am more than happy to answer any and all questions for beyond 5 p.m. if I have to. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Nick. As you saw, there's a number of questions out there. So I'll try to help you out, coordinate them. So there's a number of questions on obviously home defense or personal defense. So I'll give you one that kind of covers them all. What are 3 or 4 things we should do or change in our homes to decrease our vulnerability? Sure,
absolutely. So for the record, I have no problem talking about products for home. It's enterprise products. When I was putting this together with FEI, I mentioned that I would not basically mention products that I would recommend to corporate clients because, for security purposes. But obviously, feel free to ask me that, offline, because obviously this is going to be on YouTube. But on the home side, the best thing that you can do right out of the gate, you can do it for free, is to enable multi-factor authentication or 2-factor authentication in your life. Basically, what this means is you can go to the Facebooks of the world, Amazon, your bank, whatever it is. Your bank should already have this. If it doesn't, your bank is behind. And it's essentially download an Authenticator app. The one I recommend is Authy, A-U-T-H-Y. That is a very versatile app. You can download it for iPhone or Android. You can put it on your Windows PC or your Mac. You can even link them as well. So I have it on my tablet. I also have it on my phone, which I carry. And essentially what that does, once you link it to, let's say, Facebook or Google or whatever it is, when you log in, for example, I'll use Amazon because I don't store my passwords, and I'll get to that. But when I log into Amazon, it says, okay, please enter your second password. I can go to this app, which is encrypted into my phone, and it gives me essentially a code that changes every 30 seconds. So if your username and password is stolen in some way, shape, or form, has been exposed, let's say, into the dark web, now, even if I steal that, I can't get in because I don't have that encrypted Authenticator app to basically get that code. Now, conversely, if the website you're going to doesn't allow for Authenticator app, you have to use something like a text message, I would still enable that, although text messaging is not a recommended method anymore for two-factor authentication, because SMS, which is texting, SMS hijacking, is very easy to do. Meaning if I'm able to, let's say, hijack your phone, I can get access to that. But because the Authenticator app is encrypted into the phone, it's very hard for somebody like me to tamper with. So that would be one of the things that I would recommend. The other thing I would recommend is actually having a pretty good password policy in your personal life. If you're one of these people that has the same password for Facebook as you do your bank, that's a huge, huge problem. We found that Facebook has exposed in plain text, meaning anybody could read this, for tens of millions of people. They've exposed passwords to tens of thousands of their employees and contractors. And so having different passwords for various different things is a really good thing. For your home, I usually recommend getting a really good firewall, one that has what's called unified threat management in it. Now, there are a couple of home products that I'm happy to talk about here for this. So one of those would be a product called Bitdefender Box. Now, let's put it this way. Let's say you have a Comcast connection, and that Comcast connection is basically your wireless. It's getting everything connected for you. The Bitdefender Box actually sits between all of your devices and Comcast, and so all of your devices actually connect to the Bitdefender Box and then go out. Now, the Bitdefender Box has the ability to look at and scan websites for threat, check files to download, if you're downloading them, to see if they're infected and all of that. It is not perfect by any means. It is not an enterprise solution. I would not recommend that for business by any stretch, but I'm also not expecting a home user to spend thousands of dollars on defensive technology for their home. But you'll only spend a couple $100 getting something like a Bitdefender Box. Another one is Cujo, C-U-J-O. But Bitdefender Box, I think, tends to be on the home side pretty good. A lot of antivirus, I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of misconceptions about antivirus. People think that they, turn your computer magically into Fort Knox for $20. They don't. But there are better antiviruses out there, than the standard Nortons and Symantec's and McAfee's of the world. But what I would really recommend is getting every computer or device in your house a web filter. Now, what this basically means is that it's something you install into your computer as a program or an app onto your phone. And what this is, let's say you accidentally go to google.com as opposed to google.com. The web filter is going to say, hey, wait a second, google.com is malicious. This is a phishing site, and it's going to stop you from going to that site. And so if you can't get to the website, you can't get infected. If you can't get to the website, you can't give away your data. And if something infects you and tries to phone home, the web filter is going to see that connection routing out and hopefully stop it. That tends to be a very effective layer, because you simply cannot go to websites that are infected, or the chances of you going to a website are drastically lower than not. So that's good. The other added bonus to those kinds of things is oftentimes you can set up parental control. So if you have children, let's say that need strict guidance or strict control on the internet, and all kids do, I think you have the ability to start restricting that. So they can't go to, let's say, adult sites or sites on weaponry or, whatever you want to restrict. Oftentimes they have it by category. And so those are some really good things as well. So don't reuse passwords. Get yourself a good UTM firewall, like the Bitdefender Box for home. Again, not for business, but for home. Using multi-factor authentication with an Authenticator app like Authy, A-U-T-H-Y, and using a web filter, I think, are really good signs, on top of your antivirus as well.
Hey, Nick, can I ask you real quick to stop sharing your screen so we can see you better?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, you're good. Thank you.
Sorry. There you go.
All right, so Nick, let's obviously you talked about phishing and employee behavior and things of that nature, or vulnerabilities to individuals. There's a question out there about employee behavior. It's the key to vulnerability, and we have awareness campaigns at our jobs. Know before you do it, which sends messages. But are there any other ideas out there that might help manage or mitigate the employee behavior as the best line of defense?
Yeah, so there should be a couple of different things that I think any business should be putting out there. One, you need actual computer-based policies that do not allow your users access to things that they don't need. So, for example, how many users actually need access to control panel to change things or add and remove programs? Why are your users allowed to add programs themselves without being vetted through, let's say, your IT company or your IT employees or whatever? Having that extra layer mitigates a lot of threat, because what happens is, oh my God, I need a new copy of Adobe, and then they go to a fake Adobe site, download a fake Adobe reader, and the next thing you know, you're infected. Those kinds of things help to mitigate that problem. But one of the biggest things that you can do, and we all send out periodic information reminders and all of that, is actually awareness training through phishing campaigns. I find that to be an incredibly effective methodology. And it's not like a aha, gotcha moment. But what we will do is we will basically, we'll let a company know if we're working with them on this, hey, every employee, we're going to be sending out phishing tests. And this is not a gotcha moment. This is a learning, a training. We're going to see who opens this. 9 times out of 10, it's the CEO anyway. And so by virtue of that, we will send phishing campaigns out, and then that gives the ability for IT to start understanding over time who are the worst offenders going to be. Is that person just blanketly opening absolutely everything that they're getting, or are they starting to spot this? And so I'll give you this example. We hit a 200 user company about 3 or 4 days before Easter with essentially a fake HR email that said, open this Word document and sign up for our company's Easter potluck. Let us know what you're going to bring. We'll see you all there on Friday and all of that. And basically this poor HR lady, I didn't even know her name. I now know it's Maria. She basically got slammed with requests. Like, why didn't you tell me a week ago? I could have made my chili. What are other people bringing? What can we got 60% of that company to open that email, 60% of that company to open that email in under 2 hours. That was one of the most effective wake-up calls that company has ever had. And so I would highly recommend, it's not expensive to do. We offer as a platform through a third party. It's so easy to do. We tend to want to fish every month, and then we can track the users. So who is actually now watching the videos? Who's understanding, hey, this isn't off. Why does it say Schmacebook, not Facebook, even though it looks the same? That tends to go a very long way for awareness training as well. Not to mention just basic cyber hygiene. And if you have any kind of compliance like HIPAA or PCI or FFIEC or GLBA or any one of those, you should be required to have training on a regular basis. Most people do in-person training quarterly for those kinds of things, but I recommend phishing training monthly. And that tends to go a very long way.
Oh, thanks, Nick. We have it at ours, and they do it all the time. So yeah,
that's good. The more the merrier. I'm a fan.
Yeah. There's a couple of questions around on VPN.
Sure.
So I'll kind of summarize them, and hopefully I catch everything together.
Sure.
People they're asking questions about one of the frustrations with VPN or MFA, which I'm not familiar with.
Multi-factor authentication.
Got it. And what are your thoughts on that? And then of course there's the ultimate questions of if I'm going to put a VPN on, can you recommend something? Now, if you can't, I understand it. So for home use. Yeah.
So understand the distinction in VPN between a corporate-based VPN that, let's say, connects to your company's firewall that gets you into the assets and all of that, versus a VPN that you would go and download, purchase, and install from the App Store. And I'm happy to give you some of the top and best players in that market because, again, they're publicly known and they're highly rated. I recommend a VPN for everything. I have on my phone, for example, I have my corporate VPN, and I also have a personal VPN as well. So if I don't need access to, let's say, any of the corporate assets that I've got, basically my other VPN, my personal VPN, stays up 24/7. And I can have myself look like I'm coming from here, from Canada, from wherever I want on the planet. But the one that I typically recommend right now, and I vet my products every 90 days. So if you ask me in 90 days, that might change. But the one I typically recommend right now is a company out of Switzerland, and they have a product called Viper VPN. That's VYPR VPN. Now, the reason why I like them is one, they've got servers globally. Two, they're independently third-party audited by cybersecurity professionals to meet that standard. 3, Switzerland has some of the best data privacy and security laws on the planet, above and beyond the European Union's own GDPR. And so basically it's a really good choice for that, and it's fast and it's efficient. They've got local servers in Chicago, so if I'm just local, it'll connect me to Chicago, and now I'm adding an extra layer of encryption. And so now even Verizon or AT&T or Sprint or T-Mobile or any one of these basically can't track me as I'm using the connection. You know, it would go for everybody. All they see is the connection outside of me making an actual call, like let's say on their network. Wherever I go on the internet, now they don't know beyond just the VPN traffic that they see. So they're either going to see the VPN traffic to my office going out, or they're going to see the VPN traffic, to Viper. Another good one is private internet access. They're actually a bigger player in this field as well. That's another good alternate choice. And I was using private internet access until I switched to Viper, but I still think they're a pretty solid product as well. Now, in terms of frustrations with MFA, I'm the first to admit that it kind of sucks to have to log in and then, go find your phone and punch in a code and all of that. But conversely, I would rather blow 30 seconds of my life doing that than have my identity stolen and have to remediate possibly thousands of dollars of time, effort, energy, all of that, my potential credit score and all of that, which is another point I should make too. And I would imagine that most people here would know this already, but you should always have your credit frozen. How many times do we actually use our credit from TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, to buy a house or a car or get rent or a mortgage or, whatever it is? And so why not have it frozen the entire time? Because if I steal your identity and I go to, let's say, Best Buy and try to put out a Best Buy credit card in the hopes of just maxing out that credit, buying every TV I can until the credit's gone, and then like turning around and selling them on eBay or something, they can't run my credit if it's frozen. So when I went to buy a house, for example, buy this house, I unfroze my credit. I went to my credit bureau or my mortgage company and said, which one do you use? And they said, Equifax, whichever one it was, Equifax. And so I unlocked Equifax for the month that it would take me to go through the paperwork as I was, all that kind of stuff. And then it went right back into lockdown. And so that's more secure. But in terms of MFA, we actually have new technologies on the horizon that are going to make MFA basically integrated into what is called a single sign-on or SSO that's going to be seamless to you. So for example, if I'm using my phone here as an example and I want to log into, whatever it is I want to log into, I would log in and then I'd have to open up an Authenticator app and then punch in the code, or I have to log in here and punch in the code. But a lot of authenticators are now getting to the point where they are starting to use a process called software-defined perimeter. And you will not find an app called software-defined perimeter, for the record. It's a type of technology. It's a philosophy that starts to integrate things like the unique cryptographic identification of this phone. It can even do things like biometrics, my fingerprint, my face. It can do telemetry. Am I holding it with my left hand or my right hand? It can do geolocation. Am I in Chicago or am I breaking in from Vietnam? And so when these things match, I'm allowed in. And we're putting this in the corporate side of things, the enterprise corporate side. It's coming. It got delayed, I think, a year due to COVID because everybody scrambled to work from home. And so all these projects got put into place. The next couple of years, this is going to be standard technology. So you don't have to pop open an Authenticator app necessarily. But when you're logging in, there's going to be a lot of different cryptographic and biometric signatures that validate that you are who you are. So I am not, Nick Espinosa at 2 a.m., in Moscow trying to log in 50,000 times to a place. It basically, the logins will shut down automatically for me and say, hey, wait a second, he's not where he's supposed to be. He has a behavior that no human would have. These things don't match, therefore the login is rejected no matter what, even if the password matches. So these things are coming. But until then, the single biggest thing that we can do, because instantly, and I've done it live on stage, I will literally go to a dark web website and say, here's every single username and password for this major corporation I can buy right now. And I can show them to you live. And when I've done smaller groups where I know, let's say every CEO or CFO in the place, like let's say 50 people or whatever, I will literally run dark web scans on all of them and hand them the results in, as I'm going through my presentation. And inevitably 1 or 2 people come up to me afterwards and say, you just handed me the password I've been using for the last 10 years.
Wow.
That's why we need multi-factor authentication. Suck it up. It's worth the 30 seconds. It really is.
All right, so another one I see out here a couple of times is voice recognition authentication. What's pros, cons? What's your feelings?
Well, I mean, the problem that we have with any authentication recognition system is that it can potentially be spoofed. And in the era of deep fake, having, let's say, the facial recognition system like Face ID for Apple, which I actually broke that like the first week they came out using a parallax screen and a copy of my face. And they've improved it. Don't get me wrong. They've improved it since then. But in the era of deep fake, it is actually something that we are genuinely concerned about. So if you're going to use something like a voice recognition, make sure that is one factor, not the only factor for authentication. In Face ID, we've seen some really interesting things, like twins can get into their own. There was a case where the son, like this 10-year-old son, looked exactly like his mother, and both of them could unlock her phone. So these things are there. Like fingerprint scanners don't actually read your fingerprint. A lot of people don't know this. It actually reads the capillary pulses, in your body. So when you see in the movie, oh, I'm just going to cut off the dead hand and put it on the thing, that's total BS. That's not how that works. So these technologies are improving, but what we have in our lives, especially with our mobile devices, is we have a little bit of what's called security theater, which is the illusion of security to basically satisfy and thwart, let's say, the guy that just robs you and is not technologically savvy, or to give the person a peace of mind to say, hey, I'm linking my fingerprint, and so without my hand, they can't get in, via any other method.
Okay. A couple other questions about. We got a little bit of time, so
I'm happy to stick around.
Okay, a couple other questions about some of the common ones like Google Authenticator. Any thoughts on that one?
So Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Blizzard Authenticator, if you're into games, they all basically do the same thing. The reason why I recommend Authy over Google is anytime you see, enter your Google Authenticator, Authy works, but Authy tends to be more versatile in the ability for it to synchronize in platforms. Google is a lot more stringent with that. Not to mention the fact that I'm not a big fan of giving Google any more data than I have to typically, but no, if you were to use Google Authenticator, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. If you were to use Microsoft's, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I have another authenticator on here from an identity management solution for corporations. That's really solid too, but I'm not going to mention that because, again, corporate security. So there's a lot that's out there. I just recommend Authy just because it's a versatile platform. It's known good, known secure, known good for identity management, and that's fine. But if you're on Google, totally cool with it. That's no problem with me. As long as you've got it in your life, you're much better defended than you were previously.
All right, another ones that kind of seem to be coming up about is like antiviruses, Microsoft's Defender or some of those other, other ones that are out, McAfee and et cetera. Your general comment on those?
Yeah, so most of those are pretty good for retroactive viruses, meaning if you happen to catch a virus from 6 months ago, it might find it. But most of these are junk. Windows Defender is god awful, and if you're in a business and your antivirus is Windows Defender, you're doing something horribly wrong. It's awful. The problem that I've got is that the really good antiviruses are utilizing machine and deep learning to understand not just the actual, let's say, downloadable threat, but the behavior and characteristics of how a virus unfolds and evolves into a system, and therefore acts as a self-remediation tool. And there's just not anything like that, on the home side. And so by virtue of that, if I'm looking at a home antivirus, and I'm not expecting anybody, again, to buy 1,000 licenses of a single antivirus to do whatever, if I'm looking at the home side, I think one of the ones that's out there, and I wouldn't recommend this for corporations, but one of the ones out there that I would probably recommend for home would be WebRoot Secure Anywhere. And I will tell you why. Because it's going to give you better defense than Microsoft Windows Defender will, hands down. Its installer can basically fit on an old school floppy disk. So it has very little utilization, very little footprint in the computer. But one of the innovative things that WebRoot did is actually create cloud inoculation capability. So in other words, the WebRoot basically understood that if you're getting infected, it's going to have to phone home. It's going to have to go to the internet, and basically it runs what's called C2 or command and control. And so by virtue of that, it's going to try to phone home. But if the computer is off the internet, the virus can't spread because it can't go home to get instructions. And so they basically were able to lower the footprint. The traditional McAfee semantic way was we're going to download updates periodically into the system, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And WebRoot said, no, we're just going to go home and inoculate in the cloud. So the WebRoot will always look to the cloud to inoculate itself, which means they can tend to inoculate faster. The problem is Webroot misses a lot of things, like all of these things do. So, but on the home side, if I'm looking at performance and reliability, and I'm also looking at having, a scanner on my machine, Webroot Secure Anywhere seems to be the best of all worlds for that. But again, it's not something that I recommend on the corporate side. We are way beyond the McAfee's, the Semantics, and the Webroots in the world. It's just not economically feasible, for home users to buy this.
Would you spell that?
Webroot is WEBROOT, like I'm rooting around. Webroot, one word, and then Secure Anywhere.
Okay, I see we're at 5:02, so
I can stay around if you want me to. It's up to you guys. Whatever you'd like to do.
well, I'll ask one more, and then we'll see how the group goes here. There's been a number of questions about password managers.
Sure.
I'll just be general and say, what are your feelings on password managers?
So I do have a recommendation for password managers. I'm happy to share that with the group. I will say this on password managers, though. There are a couple of caveats with them. So about, I want to say 6 to 12 times a year, maybe once every 2 months or more, I'm reading some article on some vulnerability that says, I don't care if it's LastPass, OnePass, what you take your pick, that there's some huge vulnerability that will allow an attacker to get into your computer or steal your passwords or get into the cloud and all of that. One of the largest targets on the planet are password clouds. And who is giving you password clouds? All of these companies. So if you have your phone and you have your laptop here, for example, and you update a password here, it doesn't directly go to your phone. It goes to the cloud, and then it goes to the device. And so by virtue of that, there is a huge amount of data and information there. Now, they claim good encryption, they claim security and all of this. And I think a lot of them actually really do have a lot of that, but they're constantly under attack, which means they have to do everything right all the time. And the only thing a criminal has to do is get right once. And that's a huge problem. Now, that said, if you are doing nothing but storing them on a notepad or something like that, I will absolutely recommend going to a password manager. Right now, the one I recommend is called 1Password. It's all one word, 1Password. And the reason why I recommend them is they have a lot of features that all of the other ones do as well. The one I used to recommend is Dashlane, but the reason why I'm recommending 1Password now is that on both the iPhone and Android, they actually have anti-tamper, which means if your phone is stolen, and let's say your phone is cloned, which is actually a very simple thing to do, like a regular criminal stealing your phone could probably take it to a shop and have it done. Basically, the app itself understands it's not cryptographically on the same phone and will basically lock itself and shut it down with encryption. Meaning, even if your phone is stolen or cloned, your passwords remain safe. But if you're going to use a password manager, you cannot be one of those people. I don't care if you're on Windows or Mac, and Mac, you need an antivirus too. My God, do we break into Macs? Like people have no idea. Same with iPhones. Although iPhones, you can't get antivirus on. Thank you, Apple, for that. Basically, you need to make sure you're updating it constantly. So when you see that, Windows has updates, update it. When your Android or your iPhone says it has an update, update it. When your apps have updates, update it. We update for two reasons. One, for features and performance, whatever that is, but more importantly, we update for vulnerability. What ends up happening is researchers will find a vulnerability in an app or a software or something. They will basically turn that over to the manufacturer, to the maker, let's say Microsoft, for example, and then the clock is ticking. Microsoft has X amount of time to release an update, push it to you so that your computer gets updated, because then that exploit gets published into what's called the CVE database, and then the entire world can see it. That's why if you don't update, I don't have to figure out how to break into your network. All I have to do is go to the CVE database and download all of the exploits for your product and hit you with them. The work has already been done for me by other researchers. So make sure you're updating. But 1Password is my recommendation. With those caveats, make sure you're updating constantly.
Got it. All right. At this point, Nick, I'm going to do some closing statements for the group, and if I could ask if I've got a couple of questions, so
sure,
if you want to stay around, and anybody else that wants to stay around, we can push it out a little bit further. But anyway, so some closing statements today. Our upcoming events here at FEI, you can go out to FEIChicago.org and check out a listing of those, or read them on your newsletter for those of us who've gotten the newsletter. But to remind a couple of events coming up, April 1st, we have our Lunch and Learn session on public speaking in a virtual world. That's April 1st. On April 8th, we have our meet and greet for new members and prospects. So on April 8th, come on out and meet some of our new members and prospects and get them acclimated to FEI. That would be great. And then on April 15th, we have our leadership session with Sharina Edwards, CEO of Intren. So that's kind of our April, looking shortly out to April. Again, April 1st, public speaking in the virtual world. April 8th, meet and greet our new members and prospects. And then April 15th, our leadership session with Sharon Edwards, of CEO of Intren. Again, also, and again, you can get all that on FEIChicago.org or click on the many links in our electronic newsletter that hopefully is secure, Nick. Once again, a reminder, everybody, our 6-month trial, I know I've been pushing it, but I'll push it one more time, FEIChicago.org. Please, if you know anybody, have them come become a member for 6 months, and we will get them acclimated. All right. Also, and finally, please complete our evaluation survey that will be sent out after this meeting. We do want your feedback. If you have any suggestions for future programs, we are always looking for ideas and speakers. But we do want your feedback on evaluation surveys. So that's my housekeeping for the end here. I will thank everybody for showing up. And as always, I do thank you for being members of FEI. And don't forget our 6-month trial membership. So I'll give a couple seconds, let people, I missed the chat again, and see if anybody else wants to ask any more questions or just chime in, I guess.
Nick, do you know a service called Eudora that used to be?
It's an old email service, right?
Yes. Do you think that's safe because nobody uses it?
I mean, I haven't heard about Eudora since the Macarena was popular. So, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. I've not vetted them personally. One of the things that we do with clients, when we're doing assessments is those kinds of things. If they're using Eudora, for example. The one thing I can tell you to stay away from, like the plague, would be Yahoo. They're a very serious issue, and they got hacked by the Russians to the tune of 3 billion mailboxes. So stay away from them. But Eudora, I honestly don't know. I don't know much about them, and so I would be reticent to give you an opinion on something I've not vetted myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see if I can find another one here quick for you, Nick.
Sure.
Trying to see if I can get one. How about have you heard anything about cyber insurance and protection that way?
Yes. So I'm a huge fan of cyber insurance. I think every organization absolutely needs it in their life. I can't tell you how many times I've seen companies pulled out of the fire by cyber insurance. We have a slight issue with cyber insurance right now, thanks to the Federal Trade, the FTC. Under the Trump administration. I think it might be reversed under Biden, but essentially what was they basically laid the hammer down and said that any insurance claim where the attackers are originating from an adversarial country, such as Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, etc., the ransom cannot be paid. In other words, you're getting hit, your corporation's getting hit, and you owe $300,000 to North Korean hackers. Basically, the insurance company will say, we cannot pay this because the FTC says no, we're not allowed to legally. We would get into trouble. I believe that's going to change because obviously, while nobody probably wants to pay North Korea anything, there's no reason why the organization should lower that or have that liability shield lifted. That said, cyber insurance, I think, is beyond important. And there's a lot of calculations for risk that are involved in that in terms of reputation damage and everything else. But I would also say that get multiple cyber insurance quotes. And the absolute devil in cyber insurance is in the definitions, not the details. It's in the definitions, because how one might define an intrusion, a ransomware event, a cyber attack, or whatever can be completely different or modified. And by virtue of that, they usually show you the top line. You're going to get $1 million of coverage, but it's $100,000 for this. And this might be the most damaging thing ever, but you get $1 million of coverage. So make sure that when you are looking at cyber insurance, you're getting multiple quotes and you have a good, clear definition of what exactly they mean and how they define it. And oftentimes they will move those definitions around and have writers in the back that contradict. Get your clarifications on exactly what that means in plain writing. So absolutely.
Got it. All right. I've got one more here that's been out here a couple times. And it's a little technical, so I'll say it. Can you explain technical as well as operating supply chain hacks and the dependencies included?
Yes. So this is actually one of the reasons why the CMMC, or the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification from the Department of Defense, was essentially out there. Most of the data breaches that we are seeing lately, and I will give you a perfect example of one that happened in the last 2 weeks, are supply chain hits. Now, think about this. Many of us here probably fly on a regular basis pre-COVID and hopefully after COVID on, American, United, Delta. Take your pick of your carrier here in the United States. All of them in their supply chain have an IT company that 90% of the world's airlines use, and that company is called SITA or SITA. Now, what SITA does for these airlines is essentially run their frequent flyer program. So if you fly an American, you're in the Americans Reward Program or the United Rewards or Delta Reward, whatever that is, those reward plans are being basically handled by the airline in the airline supply chain by this third party. They got hit. SITA got hit, and now 90% of the world's airlines, everything from Japan Air to Malaysia Air to Finnair to Lufthansa to American carriers, all had to declare a data breach of your personal information because they were housing that information out there. The American Medical Billing Corporation, American Medical Corporation, Billing Corporation, Accounting Corporation, whatever it is, they were doing LabCorp, Quest, and other large companies, all of the personal health information for billing purposes. They got hit. That's what a supply chain hit is. So while your company itself, your technology was not actually breached, who you choose to trust by moving your data out to a third party to do billing, to do anything, to do database, it could be Amazon in the cloud or Microsoft in the cloud, whoever it is, when they get hit, basically the liability comes back to you based on that choice. And so they might have to declare a breach, but you as well have to do that. And we are going through multiple breaches right now. SolarWinds Orion is probably one of the worst in history. When they got hit, the Department of Defense had to declare, DHS, the Department of Treasury, the Secretary of State, not to mention more Fortune 100 companies than anything, because SolarWinds Orion was used by everybody at the senior massive level. So when we are looking at supply chain assurance and a supply chain risk, we are looking at those organizations and corporations that we do business with, and we're getting assurances from them that they actually have good cyber hygiene, good data and cybersecurity practices. That's a really good question, because that is the bane of our existence right now is supply chain hacks. And the Department of Defense said no more. And so by 2025, they're requiring the entire 300,000 corporation-wide defense industrial base to become certified for cybersecurity. They are sick of getting their intellectual property ripped off.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, we do a ton of work on that right now. It's a huge thing in cybersecurity.
There's been a couple here. You mentioned web filter. Is that a brand name, or is that just an ID?
A web filter is a type of technology. So, for example, there are some free ones out there, that are pretty solid. One of them is called Quad 9, QUAD, and the number 9. Another very popular one is called Cisco Umbrella. That's one that we see sold to corporations and home users constantly. So that's a really good choice as well. It used to be called OpenDNS, but basically web filtering, or DNS web filtering, is the technical term for that. Is if you're getting one of those, you're significantly more protected than if you have no filter. If you're just using, let's say, your Comcast connection and establishing connections to websites using what's called their DNS server, then you don't have that protection. But if you're using like a Quad 9 or Cisco Umbrella, you're much better off. And there's others as well. I think there's one called safebrowsing.net that's got really good reviews, and a lot of home users will use that. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, and then I'll go with one more, and then we can call it. So,
sure.
So there's a question: what should I do about my United Mileageplus account now that it was hacked?
Not a damn thing. See, unfortunately, in a situation like this, and this is the trust that we extend in society. So when I walk into, like, let's say my local supermarket or Home Depot or whatever it is, and I give them my credit card, I'm immediately extending trust to Home Depot or whatever to basically say, you're going to handle my credit card in a secure manner per the compliance that you fall under. And in a situation where they're breached, what can I do? The horse is out of the barn. And Home Depot had a massive data breach in 2014, I want to say. So in that sense, I'm in that boat. I used to travel something like 50, 60 times a year for speaking engagements and everything else before COVID. And so, I'm racking up frequent flyer miles left and right. And that information is out there. I mean, it's, just because of my job and who I am doesn't absolve me from that extension of trust. I mean, we live in a society where we are trusting everything. We trust the mechanic not to blow up our car when we bring it in. We're trusting the dentist to actually fix our teeth. I mean, we trust by extension of society, by extension of who we are. And this is one of those things where we trust the pilot, to be sober and fly us properly. We trust the plane not to crash. We trust, and on and on. And this is just one of those extensions. So I'm sorry. It sucks to be all of us in that case. I'm right there with you, so unfortunately your United mileage is exposed just like, mine is, sucks.
All right. There's been a couple right here. I'm going to go one more, and then I swear.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
I got nowhere to be right now. And I actually have tomorrow off. So.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So lay it on me.
So there's how do you feel about Retina Scan security?
So my issues with biometrics like fingerprints or face or retina in that sense isn't about the technology itself. I don't think there's any deleterious effect to the technology, by using any one of these scanners. My biggest concern is this for retina and face and finger is the same concern I have for DNA. In fact, I'm writing an article right now that should be published in the next couple of days for Smerconish to CNN on this, is that we don't have really good standards for biometric privacy across the United States. Now, Illinois has the BIPA, the Biometric Information Privacy Act, that safeguards this. But as soon as we're out of the state or dealing with organizations or corporations outside of Illinois, that protection drops. In the same way, there's Privacy Act in California called the CCPA, and if you don't live in California, it doesn't apply to you. So the problem that we have is that we are giving away this information, or we're giving these to private corporations that don't necessarily have to store and maintain this in any stringent standard, or they have the ability to sell it to others. So on the DNA side, for example, I will give you this example. 23andMe, which was founded by one of the wives of Google founder, Sergey Brin's wife, who founded this, they actually got into a $300 million agreement with GlaxoSmithKline to basically allow GlaxoSmithKline to use their DNA. You don't have HIPAA protections when you're going to a private corporation like this. And so my problem with Retina Scan isn't, okay, if you're storing it locally on your phone and it's not syncing back to Apple or, Samsung or, whatever your phone is, and it's staying on your phone, that's one thing. But when you are moving information that is uniquely yours to a third party, you really have to understand your rights or lack thereof. And so a retina scan, like anything else, I think is a perfectly fine technology. Your eyeballs are wholly unique, compared to everybody else's on the planet for the most part. So it's a good way to uniquely identify you. Just understand where your data goes. And so by virtue of that, I have not given out my DNA. For example, I've not spit into a tube and sent it to find that long lost relative or those kids I didn't know I have. I'm just kidding on that one. So we we have to understand what we do with our information and where we put our data, and Retina is no different. But the technology itself, I think, is very promising. It's very interesting, you know, in that. I mean, we have brainwave technology that's starting to read our brainwaves and our pulses. I think that's really cool. I just don't want Facebook to get it, you know, and they're developing it. They're literally developing. That was my video today, was a watch they're developing that reads your brainwave so that you have a virtual keyboard just out of your mind. Do I really want Facebook to have this information on me? Do I want them to have my brainwaves? Hell no, you know. But if there's actual good security laws, I'm good with that. You know, not from Facebook, but from, let's say, another corporation that I know will protect it.
All right. On that note, Nick, I'll stop asking questions. So I do appreciate everybody for showing up, and those that remained. And of course, I thank you, Nick, for taking time out of your day and presenting to us this great presentation.